Hi, this video is looking at paper 1 question 5, which is called the evaluation question. The evaluation question would always be the final question in the exam. It's always worth 10 marks. The question is, to answer this question, read lines 64 to 89 and consider the passage as a whole. The writer successfully shows that Rachel is truly happy during this part of the story. However, she never completely forgets her Amish responsibilities. To what extent do you agree? I will explain this extract later. Be careful with this exam because what a lot of students do is think the answer is just for 64 to 89. But if you read the question carefully, it says read line 64 to 89, but consider the passage as a whole, meaning some of your answers should take place outside of line 64 to 89. So the posh name for this question is personal response and evaluation. It's a 10-mark question, so around 15 minutes. You should aim for 6 to 10 quotes in your answer and zoom in on the key or juicy verbs and adjectives and explain their effect. So, like I said, read the question carefully, ask you to read the last section, but answer the question on the whole text. So if this was my exam extract, I've been asked to read that bit, I would probably take the majority of my quotes from this bit, so maybe 4 or 5, but I would definitely make sure that I track the whole text as well. So what my advice is, and the exam board's advice is, never completely disagree. It is your judgment, but it's going to be very, very rare where you would say, I 100% disagree with the question. So my advice would always be find 5 or 6 quotes that agree with the question. So in this case, Rachel is happy, and then maybe find 1 or 2 quotes that maybe show a different side of her. So something as simple as her being unhappy. Warning, don't summarise the plot, so don't just tell the examiner what the story is. And avoid feature spotting. So don't just say that's a metaphor or simile, that will get you no marks. Obviously, if you can explain the effect of the simile and metaphor, then go for it. But if you just point at a phrase and go, that's a metaphor, you'll get no marks. And remember, questions 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the exam, think about it as 1 quote equals 1 mark. So you've got to track through the text. So every couple of lines you should be highlighted and maybe commenting on the text. So do it in chronological order from first line to last. This will give you a wide range of quotes. People who don't do many quotes will get grade 3s. The examiner will normally put something like thin range of quotes, meaning they've not given enough evidence from the text. And remember, if it's 10 marks, you're looking for 10 short quotes with short explanations. What the exam board say, the challenge for the candidates on this question is to be thorough but concise, meaning thorough means detailed, concise means brief. So you're going to be lots of quotes with brief explanations. So picking successful quotes, what I say to my student is try to pick out the juicy words, mainly adjectives and verbs, and think to yourself, why has the writer chosen that one word over 600,000 other options? So if we said Rachel looked at John Book and Rachel gazed at John Book, look, that verb isn't telling us anything, but gazed is a really juicy verb that stands out. The writer didn't have to choose that word, they have for a reason. And you need to basically decide what that reason is. So what is a gaze? So if you gaze at someone, this suggests Rachel's looking at John for a long time in an affectionate way. Yeah, so those two differences. Think about why the writer has chosen this specific word gazed instead of a plain one. And basically, it's that the word gaze suggests an attraction and a romantic attraction that the word look just simply doesn't. So if we look at another example quote, Rachel said, "This is bliss being with you, John." Again, think of the effect. Why has it chosen this juicy word? It could have just been, "This is nice being with you," but think about this is bliss. What is the effect of this word? Be that human dictionary, pick out certain words and phrases and say what they mean. So if you think about the word bliss, it probably means things like supreme happiness, relaxed, delight, ecstasy, joy. Now basically use those words and put them into an answer. The writer shows Rachel's happiness with her dialogue. This is bliss being with you. This tells the reader she feels relaxed and joyful when she is with John. So the green is the topic, is my sentence starter of the question. My yellow is my quote. And my blue is that explanation of the juicy word, the effect on the reader. Try to have these 3 things in your answers. Don't just use a fragment of the quote, write enough to give context to your point. 1 sentence is fine. So a lot of students just do a 1-word quote, and it actually is very confusing for the examiner. So this is what I've told you, and we'll get a mark. This is bliss being with you, then I've explained it. If you just literally put bliss, the examiner might not know what you mean. It's a bit confusing. Just write down a sentence to make sure you get the mark. Remember, if the quote is obvious, you don't always need to explain it. So if the question is, how does the writer show that Rachel was happy? If the quote was, Rachel was very happy when she was with John, you can literally just put, the writer shows Rachel is happy in this part of the extract with the phrase, Rachel was happy when she was with John. You're not going to be able to do this 5 times out of 10, but you might be able to do it twice out of 10 and get yourself 2 easy marks. Okay, so the Amish community, if you look at an earlier video that I did, the How video, we looked at the same film and book. So the Amish community are a religious, it's a religion in Pennsylvania in America. And basically, to give you a few pointers on it, they prioritize humble living. They don't have any electric, so they use gas lamps. They don't have cars. They travel locally in horse-drawn carriages. They wear traditional clothing. They refer to anyone who's not in the religion as the English, and they normally speak in like a German dialect and English to outsiders. So the other video I looked at, it's in the playlist in the description. This was the How question. The extract was set in the mid-1980s and we follow Samuel Lapp, a young AIM Amish boy who becomes a sole witness to a brutal murder in a Philadelphia train station. So that was the earlier clip and that was the earlier question. How does the writer use language to create a sense of tension for Samuel? Have a look at the video in the playlist. So we're carrying on with the same book, but we're a bit later in the story. So what's happened is Samuel has seen a murder, and we find out it's actually a policeman, a corrupt policeman in the police force that has committed the murder. So after young Samuel witnesses the murder, he and his mother Rachel must hide in their Amish village with lead detective John Book, who's in this photo, who's also hiding from the police. Living in close quarters, Rachel develops a dangerous attraction to John, who is known as an Englisher, from a world she is forbidden to join. This attraction creates a deep conflict as her faith strictly prohibits English influences and relationship with outsiders. If the elders discover her feelings or her defiance, she faces the ultimate repercussion. The Amish call this shunning. This would make her a ghost in her own community, permanently cut off from her family and everyone she loves. This is Eli, who is Rachel's father-in-law. Rachel's husband died before the murder happened. But she's looked after by her ex-husband's father. So remember, this is the question. Rachel's truly happy during this part of the story. However, she never really completely forgets her Amish responsibilities. So I'm going to show you the clip from the film. If you don't want to watch it, skip on 4 minutes and we'll just get to the extract.
I told Eli that you're a carpenter.
Hold this up closer, will you?
He said you could come to Sook's barn raising.
Well, if I'm still here.
Weenie roasts. I don't know anything about weenie roasts. That's a West Coast thing.
Right.
Let's have some letters on weenie roasts. Why not? Presenting golden oldies. We've got some great ones and some old ones coming right up. Here's one takes me back. I'm afraid to say it dates me. Maybe it dates you.
Oh, this is great. This is the best.
Don't know much biology. Don't know much about science books. Don't know much about the French attitude. But I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be. Don't know much about geography. Don't know much trigonometry. Don't know much about algebra. Don't know what a slide rule is for. But I do know 1 and 1 is 2. And if this one could be with you, what a wonderful world this would be. But I'm glad to be. Or maybe by being an A student, baby, I can win your love for me. Don't know much about history. Don't know much biology. Don't know much about science. Don't know much about the French attitude. But I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me true, what a wonderful History, biology, science book, literature. I love you. You love me too. What a wonderful world this would be.
Rachel, was tust du hier? Die Musik.
Don't go away, because we got Davy T dropping in for a little while. He's gonna
Die
have
Musik.
stories to tell us. If last week was anything.
Rachel, ich sprich mit dir.
You're listening to WB 4040. Let's still hit the golden oldies.
Rachel. Rachel, what is it with you? Is this the ordnung?
I have done nothing against the rule of the Ordnung.
Nothing? You bring this man to our house with his gun of the hand. You bring fear to this house. Fear of English with guns coming after.
I've committed no sin.
Maybe. Maybe not yet. But Rachel, it does not look. You know there has been talk. Talk about going to the bishop and having you shunned.
It is idle talk.
Oh, do not take it lightly, Rachel. They can do it. They can do it just like that. You know what it means, shunning. I cannot sit at table with you. I cannot take a thing from your hand. I cannot go to worship with you. Oh, child. Do not go so far.
I'm not a child.
But you are acting like one.
I'll be the judge of that.
No. They will be the judge of that, and so will I. If you shame me,
You shame yourself.
Okay, so as I read it through, look for quotes to show she's happy, that she never forgets her Amish responsibilities, and maybe see if you can find a few quotes that don't agree with the question. John Book pulled a small radio from his pocket and set it on the workbench. He turned the dial until a song filled the barn. Wonderful world. The music felt wild and loud against the quiet walls. John started to move, his boots tapping a beat. He began to sing along, his voice a rough, happy growl as he butchered the lyrics. Don't know much about history. Rachel stood in the doorway. The music was a sinful noise, but her heart raced with excitement. John held out his hand like a silent invitation. She cast a glance at the dark fields, checking for the elders, but then she stepped into the light. They were just two people lost in the rhythm. The barn was a hidden kingdom where rules didn't matter. For the first time in years, the tension left her shoulders, and she leaned into him, finding a strange, easy comfort in his arms. Her eyes sparkled in the dim light, and a wide, genuine smile broke across her face. She forgot the world outside those doors, resting her head against his chest as if his jacket was a shield against the law. Rachel's laughter was untamed. They were trapped in a bubble of magic. Then the bubble burst. The barn door creaked open with a heavy groan. A tall, dark shadow stood there. Eli. The music suddenly sounded cheap and ugly in his presence. John snapped the radio off and the silence was cold as ice. Rachel. Eli's voice was a crack of a whip. He didn't look at John, he only looked at her, his eyes full of dark shame. You shame your father, you shame us all. He pointed a finger towards the house like a judge passing a sentence. Rachel's face turned pale as a ghost, the magic draining away as she prepared to leave. She hurried past into the night, leaving John alone in the dead silence of the barn. But as she reached the threshold, she stopped and locked eyes with the old man. With a voice that rang with sharp defiance, she said, You shame yourself, Eli. Okay, so I would say there's absolutely loads in there that you could do, almost probably 20 quotes. You've got probably 7 or 8 that shows she's happy. You've got a couple that show she never forgets her Amish responsibilities. And probably 2/3 of the way through, I would talk about how I'd actually disagree with the question where she goes happy to unhappy. So remember, that was the question. Remember, always I've got to do one little introduction sentence where you agree or disagree with the question. You don't need a quote for this because you're going to give quotes later in it. I would say I mostly agree that Rachel was happy in this part of the story and never forgets her Amish responsibilities. So I'm just going to pick out a couple. I would say here, if you look where I've gone into blue, that's where I almost start disagreeing with the question. So I'll just pick out a couple. So Rachel's laughter was untamed. Again, untamed is a juicy word. Think about what it means. So I put Rachel is shown to be happy with the phrase Rachel's laughter was untamed. Then I'm going to explain the word untamed. This shows she feels liberated and free. If it's an untamed, she feels liberated and free with John. The other one I'm going to pick out, which shows she maybe forgets her Amish responsibilities. The music was a sinful noise. So think about it, both sinful and noise are sort of negative in terms of music. So I put Rachel's Amish background is shown with the phrase this music was a sinful noise. This shows that Rachel has been taught that modern music is against her religion's laws, almost like she's breaking the law by listening to the music. Okay, so I've got my introduction sentence. I'm going to go through them all. Look how I'm tracking through the text. All of them are very short, and I'm just commenting on each text in order and then seeing how it links to the question. Rachel's Amish background, okay, we've done that one. However, her heart races with excitement, which shows she's attracted to John and wants to dance with him. Her Amish beliefs enter her mind again as she casts a glance at the dark fields, checking for the elders. This means she's worried about being seen with John. The adjective dark tells the readers the elders are a negative presence that may spoil her happy moment. The tension left her shoulders. This suggests a weight has been lifted from Rachel. She feels free and relaxed with John. Another quote that shows she's happy is we are told she has a strange, easy comfort with John. I've not explained that one because it's so easy. She's shown to be happy when she's described as having a wide, genuine smile. So I'm zooming into the juicy word genuine. This shows that Rachel's happiness is uncontrollable and sincere. Now I've started to disagree with the statement. I disagree with the statement that Rachel never forgets her Amish responsibilities with the phrase, she forgot the world outside those doors. I've not explained that one because it's really easy. I disagree with the statement as the whole extract changes after Eli enters. The bubble burst suggests this brief time of freedom for Rachel has ended abruptly. I think the door opening with a heavy groan mirrors Rachel's feelings when Eli interrupts them. Her mood worsens even more when her face turned pale as a ghost when Eli admonishes her for dancing with John. And then I've done one that's got another sort of facet of Rachel, not really happy or unhappy, but I've talked about this. However, the extra ends on a positive note for Rachel when she tells Eli, you shame yourself, Eli. This shows even though her night with John has ended, she's now a different person. She's not sort of submissively just gone, you're right, Eli, and gone into the house. She sort of turned back on him in a defiant way. So like I say, for this question, 75% of the question were your quotes. Perhaps agree with the question and then see if you can find 3 or 4 that disagree. And if you can comment on a change of the character, which I've done in the last bullet point, again, that is something that's going to up your grades.